Hey, Steve.
Hey, Jim.
So I had to look up the definition of potpourri. it's a mixture of dried petals and spices placed in a bowl or a small sack to perfume clothing or a room.
Okay, yeah, I always thought it was just that crap that really smells bad.
Well, we're going to potpourri it today. How's that?
I think that's fantastic. And just don't try eating any of it.
And welcome once again to another episode of Two Guys Talking About Records, a vinyl community podcast. My name's Jim. I'm a record store owner.
And I am Steve, a record collector.
It's been a good week, hasn't it?
I think it has.
You're still recovering, I think, aren't you?
Yes, yeah. We got back from Nebraska, had a great time, but I had so many albums that's just stacked up that I haven't listened to. I've been just running ragged, and we're doing work around the house painting, so once in a while I get to listen to a record now.
Once in a while, but it's been a busy week here too as well, but it's summertime. What can you expect?
Yep, exactly.
So this week for our 20th episode, can you believe that first off? 20th episode, we're going to do a little bit of a potpourri and talk about a variety of subjects, kind of following up on some things that we've talked about previously. Talk about a couple of very interesting news items that we'd found over the week regarding vinyl and the collectability thereof. But as always, let's kick off. What did you do this week as far as pickups?
Well, a few of them I have here. I got the very first Billy Idol. I found that here at Radio Wasteland.
Yeah.
Really for Billy Idol, I just need the first and second album, and I'm pretty happy. So I had bought the second one here and finally found the first one. White Wedding and Dancing with Myself are on there. So I got all the Billy Idol I truly need in my life. So I'm happy there. And I picked up here at my local store the Fela Kuti Gentleman. It came out in 1973. And we were excited about this because it's on Igbo Smoke Vinyl.
We had to look that up.
That's right. What the heck? Igbo. I mean, it's my first one. What was it? Something like marijuana or whatever?
It had something to do with that, yes.
Yeah.
So it's the color of a certain type of variety smoke.
That's right. So it's Igbo. And I have no idea if we're saying that right, but hey. Then when I was on my travels, I bought this it's a group called Ogasa. And the album's called Ogasa Original, and it's a Nigerian group. Fela Kuti's from Nigeria. These guys from Nigeria. So it's more that funk music happening from the 70s, getting a little more disco-y, but still very, very interesting stuff. Good rhythm, good beat. So just nice to add to the African collection. And then I returned kind of back to the States with Robert Johnson's King of the Delta Blues.
Cool.
Yeah, that's a nice album. I have that double album set with all of his works. So why not just buy, since I have all his stuff, let's just get another album with his stuff on there. I sometimes it makes no sense on what I do, but that's called record collecting.
That's what we do.
How about you, Jim?
Well, it's been a fun week, and I can't believe that I forgot to mention these back when we did our tribute albums and tribute artists. Mm-hmm. But I picked up, finally opened. I've had it for a couple of weeks, but I've had some other stuff going on. But I opened up my copy of Tributes, Songs for Neil, Volume 3. And what this is, it's a series, obviously the third one in a series, of tribute albums done by Rush tribute bands as a cancer research fundraiser for Neil Peart, in the name of Neil Peart, who died from that rare form of brain cancer a few years back. Mm-hmm. So I'd hooked up with the folks that have been putting these together. It's the Rush Fest Scotland group, in particular a gentleman by the name of Steve Brown, who is in a Rush tribute band of his own like. It's called Moving Pictures UK. And they do a really good job putting these together. And it's not your typical tribute albums like we talked about a few weeks back, where they just kind of throw together famous artists and names to put out an album in somebody else's name. This is actually groups that are tributes in their own right, and they make a living paying tribute, kind of like the Brit Floyd, but in this case to Rush. And then they come together to create this album of music to pay tribute to Neil Peart. Okay. And some of the songs are very, very great, very beautiful. nifty renditions of Rush songs. And this is, again, speaking as a Rush fan, it's very difficult to hear somebody else doing their work without feeling a little bit of, oh, what are you doing this? But they've done a nice job with this. There's a couple that are head scratchers, but they really dig deep into the catalog. And the artwork for this thing is done by the gentleman by the name of Hugh Syme, who's done artwork for a lot of Rush albums dating back to the 80s.
Okay.
So it's got that look and feel of an authentic Rush album. And this is just a beautiful piece of work. And kudos to the folks at Rush Fest Scotland for putting this together. And side note to this, the band Moving Pictures, Steve's band, is going to be performing in Ontario later this summer. I think I'm going to make it a trek over there to go visit and meet him in person finally.
Yeah.
So that was a neat pickup, and I do like the album. It's nowhere near, not a Rush album by any means, but it's a great listen, and it's for a great cause, and I'm happy to be a part of that.
Sure.
Secondly, I picked up another Dukes of the Stratosphere. We've talked about these guys before, but I picked up Sonic Sunspot. That's with the PS in both of those.
Yeah.
And the first time it took me by surprise, but when I saw the second Dukes of the Stratosphere come through, I'm like, I know what this is. And it really boggles the mind as much as the first one does, because it's psych rock, but it's modern. It's XTC, but it's the Beatles, but it's more XTC than anything because of the connections.
Yeah. I like the first, and I don't know what your thoughts, but I like the first one better than the second one.
I think I have too, but I've only given the second one spin, but I'm going to go back through it a little more deeply.
Yeah, it's neat you got that.
And my third pickup for the week, and I apologize to our listeners because this is going to be a visual thing here that Steve gets to see, but it's necessary that I do this. There's obviously a name for this phenomenon. You know, have you ever bought a vehicle, a certain make or model or a color, and then all of a sudden you start seeing that make, model, or color vehicle everywhere on the road? Okay, let's kind of connect that to a record album where you're searching and searching for an album. Maybe it's a grail, maybe it's just something you've always wanted, and you never seem to find one. And then when you finally do find one, all of a sudden you start seeing them everywhere?
Yes.
Okay. And they're usually in better condition and at a cheaper price?
Yep.
All right. So on this morning's Sunday show, Steve did...
No way.
He did an album from Aphrodite's Child, 666, or if you turn it upside down, 999.
Yes.
So... And this one popped in, and I thought, Steve was talking about this as a pickup a couple of weeks ago. You just did it on your show earlier this Sunday morning.
Yeah.
And I saw this. I thought, well, heck, here we go. Check this thing out.
And my cover's beat, and I'm telling you, this is... Wow. I mean, it is incredible, pristine condition.
And the vinyl's nice, too, and it does have that Vertigo label that you were really looking for.
Yeah, the one that sucks you into the devil vortex.
Yep.
Wow.
So, but here's the deal. I don't think I'm adding this to the personal collection. I gave it a listen, and some of it's really good, and then some of it's just like, what the hell am I listening to? Hell, literally, what the hell am I listening to?
It's just like Zach. You look at the lyrics, go, what?
Well, one whole song is apparently the physical exertion of some sort of romantic interlude that lasts for about 5 minutes. Just like, picture in your mind what I'm talking about.
For God's sakes, get over with it.
So I'm not sold on this actually going into it's a valuable album, so I may put it out on the floor, but I just thought that you might find that both A, amusing, and B, frustrating that you've...
Unbelievable. You did this. Now, this was a cheaper album. I had been looking for the very first Molly Hatchet album. And it should be easy to find. I couldn't find it, and I'm waiting for Jim for it to come in. Doesn't. So I finally I find it, pick it up at some other place. Like the very next week, Jim brings it in, and now like every other week, the stinking album seems to pop into the store. It's like unbelievable.
It's the one on the horse, right?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, I've got 2 copies in the wings ready to go right now.
And I was waiting forever for this thing. It's a common album, but I used to have it. I wanted it back since the flood. It couldn't find it, and now it's like everywhere.
We may have to talk to some sort of psychological expert about what this phenomenon is when you're looking and looking for something. When you finally get it, then you see it everywhere. There's got to be a name for this someplace.
That's incredible.
I'll listen to it a couple more times, and I've got a Technics SL12, so I can spin it backwards if I need to.
Okay.
So if I'm not here in the next week, just
that's right.
Send a
down
exorcist
out.
So this week we had talked about doing kind of a multiple topic show just to kind of catch up on a few things and hit on some very interesting stories. But I also wanted to give a quick update. A couple of weeks back, I talked about this little issue that I had experienced with selling on Discogs, and admitted to you that I had pulled everything off of our Discogs store until I could get it worked out. Well, the follow-up on this is that I have not heard back from Discogs. It's been 3-4 weeks now. I didn't really expect to. I did some digging around, though, and I found in their FAQs, the frequently asked questions, and part of that agreement type of thing that nobody ever reads, but you sign when you do stuff. And I found a little segment in there where they talk about their Discogs fee structure, and that there's the Discogs fee of 9 point whatever percent. And then below that, it says plus a partnership fee. But it doesn't say in their FAQ what that fee is. And this was, for those of you that aren't familiar, a couple of weeks back, I sold an item on Discogs, and for a reason of kind of confirming an address, I had to go into my PayPal account and look at that particular transaction. And when I did that, I saw an extra fee that I wasn't aware of in there, and it was from Discogs. So just to recap, the Discogs sales page says, here's our fee, and that's it. The PayPal transaction page says, here's our PayPal fee, and then here's a partnership fee. So that's what this is. And I don't want to call it a hidden fee because it's actually, you can see it. Discogs just doesn't be very upfront about it when they say. So all said and done, between the PayPal fee, the visible Discogs fee, and now this partnership commission that shows up only in the PayPal transaction, the total fees for selling on Discogs come out to about 23% of an item. And for someone, a store owner like myself, who tries to keep things priced reasonably, that wipes out any kind of, markup, the small markup we get with new vinyl as it is.
Yeah.
So I have not put anything back up on Discogs as of this recording. I don't believe I'm going to. I mean, I may at some point in time if I've got something that I have a little bit better of a profit margin on that I can work with, but it's not worth it for me to sell new vinyl on Discogs anymore simply because of an exorbitant amount of fees. And I'm not faulting them. They got to make a living, but they need to be a little more upfront.
Well, it's like, so you're going to sell an album. It's like, well, I'll add 23% to it. So even as a collector, as we're buying off this, and oftentimes you see this album for sale, and you look at the median price, what says it's a very good plus. So why is it so much over the median price? And we all thought, well, they're just trying to get whatever they can get because a lot of collectors like me are stupid and we're just going to buy it anyway. But, part of this is they're paying 23% more to sell it, so I got to raise that up.
And for some stores like ours, they've got to do this. Now, I know that there's other record stores on there that still have things down in price. They may get them cheaper directly from the label than what I can do from our distributors. So each to their own. I'm just not going to sell on Discogs, and we'll look for other avenues.
Well, and so many are just, they're at home. I met a guy a couple weeks ago, and he's retired, but what he does now is he just sells on Discogs. He goes out to thrift stores, tries to find good stuff, which we'll talk about in just a minute.
Your profit margin may not be.
But and so he brings the stuff in, and then he has his own Discogs store, just as in his house that he sells. So I'll have to drop him a line to see how he handles that.
One this is what we'll call a tease in the old broadcasting business. In a few weeks, look for some announcements on something that we're going to be involved with this. I just have to finalize it, but something that could be a little bit of a competitor for Discogs. Oh. Not in the database side, but at least in the marketplace.
Okay.
So stay tuned. I can't elaborate much more than that at the moment. So
yeah, I'm totally teased too because I don't have a clue what he's talking about. So we're all teased right now.
Just remind me, otherwise it'll slip by. So one of the other things that popped up this week, and this is interesting. Again, we're going to go back to Discogs for the rarity of something like this. Back in April on Record Store Day, one of the most sought after titles was the Randy Macho Man Savage album, Be a Man. So limited was it that Record Store Day took charge of this for the allocation to the record stores, and that we were told that no record store in the country got more than one copy of this on Record Store Day. And it was, for whatever reason, just it's a wrestler from the 80s, huge demand for it. I think the third person in our line on Record Store Day got it, and then that was it. Nobody really expected to get one, and so the aftermarket went crazy on Discogs, going up towards 60, 70, $80 for this thing.
Yeah.
Lo and behold, last week I get a note from our distributors saying, hey, they repressed this. And I thought, okay, well, it was supposed to be a Record Store Day exclusive, which means that there's no repressings. That's the pull for these types of albums, and it creates that demand. So for them to say, and it's not them, it's the label, and I think Record Store Day may have had a hand in asking the label to repress this. Now, here's the thing. This is not technically it's a repressing, but it's not being branded as a repressing. It's still being called a Record Store Day exclusive, first time on vinyl. They repressed the exact same version and are still calling it a Record Store Day exclusive release. Is that on the up and up for you?
Not really. Now, is that the same cover or is that a different cover?
It's the exact same cover. It's the exact same sleeve.
Everything.
It's the exact same hype sticker. It's the exact same color vinyl. I don't know whether or not the runouts, I didn't open a copy, obviously. I don't know if the runouts are different, because that's typically how you would denote one pressing from another, is that the second pressings or whatever would have a different code in the runouts. But to my knowledge, everything so far in this is exactly the same as the April release.
Was part of the problem with Record Store Days they just couldn't get them all pressed what they wanted to in time, so this is finally catching up?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
I had heard that everybody was caught by surprise on the demand for this, and especially the label. And then so much so leading up to Record Store Day, the day or two before, there was talk about trying to get to the label and asking them to make more. Maybe they did that before Record Store Day and the label hasn't been able to do it until now. But for whatever reason, this is still being called that Record Store Day release.
Well, I think all people are inherently good and very honest. So I think what happened is they found some cases in their warehouse.
There we go.
Well, look at this. Well, we were missing these. There they are. Let's sell them.
Well, regardless, where on April and Record Store Day, every store was allocated one copy of this. Our distributors were told that no one can order more than 10 copies this time around. So, and I didn't think the demand was going to be tremendous. I didn't order 10 copies. We were allowed to ask for up to 10. I asked for 6. They were gone within a day and a half.
Wow.
From our store after we put them out.
Really? I absolutely do not understand that album. For those of you that did buy it, great job. I'm happy for you that somehow this wrestler is a great singer. I personally am not getting it. Yeah, I mean, where's Hulk Hogan's? Oh, wow.
That's coming too, I would imagine.
Yeah, you just wait till next Record Store Day. Every Rowdy Piper, all of them are going to have their own, because obviously they sell.
I've already got a Dick the Bruiser album,
okay.
But that's from Detroit. It's a whole other story, and it's not really Dick the Bruiser.
Lord. Okay.
So just pay attention to Discogs. Maybe if there's a separate run out for the second-ish pressing, that'll be denoted in there. Maybe not. At last look, there was only one version in there, and it was this one. And they were still going for $50 or $60.
So if I got one on Record Store Day, and I'm pretty excited because look at the value of it, well, there goes the stock market, baby.
It's going to go down.
Yep.
Okay, the other cool news, and this is I guess cool news, is that we had let me call this up here, a news story pop through the other day saying that Third Man Records, Jack White and Third Man Records, and very specifically his Detroit pressing plant, have partnered up with Blue Note to release some very specific Michigan-related albums.
Yeah, that was, Third Man. They do so many different things, and they are all over the place. But that was really, really neat, especially, what was they called it?
313, and that's the area code for Detroit, used to be at least. The original, they're so broken up now with area codes, but traditionally 313 was the Detroit area code for phone. The story we had here, this was from WDET, a public radio station in Detroit, saying the Third Man has announced its partnership with the iconic jazz label Blue Note to release the 313 series, a collection of vinyl re-releases of music with strong connections to Detroit. There's going to be 5 albums from Blue Note artists who are either Detroiters or recorded their music in Detroit, and they've been handpicked by Blue Note president, native Detroiter, and host of a program in Detroit, Don Was.
Yeah, wow. And I believe it said in there that there'll be various renditions of it, 313 for each type.
I believe that's what I'd read too as well. They're going to be very limited. And the thing is, the cost on these, and kudos to Jack White for this, but the cost on them is not over the top. They're all in the $30 to $40 range, $50 range for the double. But what do we have as far as the titles go here?
Well, there's Thad Jones. He has one. Oh, man, now I'm trying to think what that...
It's called Detroit, New York Junction.
Detroit, New York Junction. That came out in 1956. It's a hard bop one. If you want to get a reissue, an OG, $477 medium. A 2006 reissue goes for $91. There's Donald Byrd, Electric Bird, and that came out, I believe, in 1970. And they're, an original now, medium price is $44. There are, cheaper. Well, a 96 repress is $35, which is similar to the price.
Yep.
Elvin Jones put out one called Genesis, and that came out in 71, which is post-bop. You can pick that up really inexpensive on the open market, an original for $24. The Contemporary Jazz Quintet has one, Multi-Direction. And again, when that, a medium price in Discogs on that one's $42, so this is very comparable to what you would get, and it's a third-man pressing, which generally is really good quality. And finally, there was Grant Green, Live at Mozambique. And this was released on CD only in 2006, so it's never been put on vinyl, so it'll be a first.
And that is the double LP in this offering.
Yeah.
Now, from what I'm seeing, there are going to be limited, but there's a black vinyl version of each and then a colored vinyl version of each as well. Conspicuously missing on here is a Was Not Was.
Yeah,
What Up Dog?
Yeah, that's right. That's a fun album.
You'd think Don Was would push for that one.
Yeah. I actually this morning I went into the Third Man site and I ordered the Thad Jones and I ordered the Donald Byrd.
Cool.
I chose those two just because if I want to buy them on the open market, I'm going to pay a lot more. So this was a better price. It is that limited 313. Now, there could be, I guess, you could have 20 different variants of this, so there could be plenty of them out there. It's just certain variants will be,
That may have been the smarter thing to do, too, because with such limited runs, indie stores like ours aren't going to it's not going to trickle down to us unless it's a more broadly distributed black vinyl version.
Yeah, and these multi-runs seems to be where everyone's going now. It's happening more and more where we're going to reissue this, but it's all these little productions of different colors that you can get. Different record stores have gotten into that now where they're having special ones pressed, a couple hundred, just for their store only. And they go at crazy prices, But so you're seeing all these, especially I've seen it with, 70s psych and stuff. They're coming out with this and, 200 here, 200 there. They're all different. So for that crazy person that wants to get every variant, they can go nuts and spend a ton, but sometimes it gets a little confusing.
What are the dates on these?
The first one, Thad, I believe they're putting out at different times. The very first one is July 21st. It is coming out, and I believe that was the Thad Jones will be coming out the 21st, and then it's spread out.
Okay, so some very cool stuff. And again, not only are the musicians and the music have connections to Detroit, the albums are being pressed in Detroit at the Third Man plant.
Yeah, I was worried that, it would be another one of these big cash grabs where we're going to jack up the prices quite a bit. Overall, it was fairly, considering where we're at in the world right now with vinyl prices, it wasn't that bad.
So something really cool to look forward to, especially if you're a fan of Michigan music and jazz.
Yes.
Keep an eye on these from Third Man. Well, thirdly, this is an interesting topic to get to kind of round us out today. Speaking of the price of records and finding things at thrift stores. Segue time. Found an article. My wife actually found this and sent it to me here. She told me about it. From the Orlando Sun-Sentinel down in Florida. The headline of this article is "Say Goodbye to $1 Vintage Records. thrift store chains are cashing in on the vinyl resurgence. So the push of this article is basically saying, there was a time where you could go to a thrift store and all records were $1 or 95 cents or whatever that particular store would be doing. And this is something that you and I have talked about, especially when we did our little antique store segment several shows back. But we didn't really get into the thrift store side because thrift stores have always kind of been an interesting animal. You either find nothing but Mitch Miller or classical, or you find a grail.
Yeah.
There's really no in between.
Yeah. It is. And I am in the first group where it's nothing. I just go in and I get nauseous after looking at the condition and run out screaming.
I mean, occasionally you could find probably some more common stuff in there, but it usually disappears, especially with more people thinking they're looking in thrift stores. But there's another reason that you're not seeing a lot of good stuff in thrift stores, and that has to do with the fact that thrift stores are looking at this and saying, how can we cash in a little bit on this? And they're pulling these off the shelves to offer them online on their websites.
Yeah, it was interesting. They have a warehouse, so they pull them. These stores, each of these Goodwill stores are pulling them and shipping them to this to their warehouse now, where they start doing that. And it's just not vinyl; it's everything that has a value. So they're finally seeing, God, people are making a lot of money when they buy stuff from us.
Well, vintage clothing, for example, is stereo equipment. All of that stuff you could find at thrift stores.
Yeah, I have a friend, and his wife goes to Goodwills all over the place and buys vintage purses and vintage clothing and resells it, and she makes $1,000, $2,000 a month off this. She knows what she's looking for, but now Goodwill's beginning to know what they're looking for.
So can we fault them for this?
You know what? It's a capitalistic society. I think sometimes you have to look at Goodwill as the money goes. It is a nonprofit.
Yep.
Though if you look at their corporate office, you would say, wow, that's pretty fancy. Or all these new stores that are very fancy now because Goodwills are everywhere and they're spending a ton of money on this. So this money is going into a lot of, for-profit type stuff.
There's lots of news stories, and I'd read a couple too, talking about, well, can Goodwill truly be a nonprofit when their CEO rakes in probably 7 figures in this? And yes, they are. And I don't want to get into that side of the controversy with this, because Goodwill, things like Salvation Army, those type of thrift stores, in some cases St. Vincent's, do good work in their communities. They put money back into their communities. They train, they give people jobs, they help out with food drives and the like. So there's that whole section of this. But from the record collector side, it used to be kind of a cool thing to be able to do, to go there and see, can I find this very cool grail?
When I went on the website, and you can go on there, and you just go into vinyl records. There was one that was out there. It's called Trampled by Turtles, Palomino, and they're asking for $19.99 for it. So I looked at Discogs. The average price on there, the median price was $21.99. The cheapest being offered on Discogs was $17.99. So they had it there. Now, the thing is, on Discogs, we have very good, whatever, near mint. There is nothing. You don't know what you're getting when you go into Goodwill. It could have been a trashed record, and I believe it says on there, it's just the way it is.
It is. Now, for research purposes, I did go in. I'm not recommending. I mean, you can check these out and search for them yourself if you really wish to do so, or you could support your local independent record store. Either way. But Goodwill has 2 different. We're going to pick on these guys for a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I do know that this is for a fact, because one of our customers works for one of these thrift stores and says, as soon as records are donated, they're not put on the floor. They're sent to this clearinghouse, along with other things as well. So that is a given that's happening. When you donate records to a local, bigger thrift stores, I'm not talking like the little ones. We've got one here in Midland called Hooves and Heart, which is a true local, and it's owned and operated locally and helps locally. I try to give stuff to them when I can, versus the other ones, although I see the merit in that. But when the records are given, essentially gifted for a tax write-off in some cases, they're supposed to go out on the floor, but they don't. They go to this clearinghouse where they're sorted and saying, okay, these are okay to go on the floor. These go to the central clearing location to be put on the website. Now, Goodwill, to my looking here, have two different web presences.
Yeah.
And the first one was called shopgoodwill.com, and this is everything they've got on there. And this looks to me like it's more of an auction site than anything.
Okay.
And right on the first page of that, as of recording this, there's a vinyl album bundle box. It says Taylor Swift, Cardi B, and it's already up to $180 with 35 bids on it. Harry Styles, a lot of modern music in there. And yeah, you can bid on it, but you're paying big money for this thing. But again, where is this money going to? It's going to Goodwill, which then, well, after pays expenses, goes technically to their local dealers.
Yeah.
So they more recently launched one that is called Goodwill Finds. And this is more of a shopping cart system more than an auction site. And this one actually posts pictures of the stuff you're buying.
Yeah.
There was one that I called up, and I don't know if I can find it on here again, but I found an Elton John record on here. And it was physically beat. The cover was physically beat up, and they still wanted $30 some odd for it. And there was a picture of the record. You could see how dirty it was. And you could see scratches. But even going through here, there's one here. It's a vintage bundle of 6 assorted vinyl records. Every single one of those 6 is a Herb Alpert record, and they've got a $27 price tag on that.
I saw that one. The classic, go to Goodwill. Oh, look at all the Herb Alpert for $1. Well, honestly, they've been underpriced. Now let's do this. They had a bunch of those, like $42 for like 6 or 8 albums.
Yep. And I mean, you can scroll through this website, and then I see a 21 Pilots on clear vinyl for $20, which is reasonable. I mean, that's close to the regular price on there. But for the most part, you're getting that Goodwill fare of, I see the Kingston Trio for $25.
And this is just these crazy albums that really were still really not worth anything, and they're pulling that out. So it is really the worst of the worst is being left in Goodwill to just sit there and die.
Hasn't that kind of always been the case? We've heard rumors before of record dealers or record collectors who have gone to thrift stores and worked out some sort of a special deal with, if you get a big batch of records in, give me a call. I'll go through them for you. And then picking the best stuff out for themselves. And then the chaff hits the floor.
Yes, it's true. And that happens, and they put it into their own little store that they have. Or, some are collectors, but most of them, it just goes into their own resale shop. And then whatever hits the floor, good luck with.
Yeah.
Well, now it's even worse with this. I mean, considering what they're putting into these bundles is just, it makes a scratch. $42, and you get 8 of these. Again, no idea about the condition. Everyone's been to Goodwill. You understand the condition of an album at Goodwill. Yeah. Once in a while, you accidentally find a really clean one. That's called classical music because, it's played once, and they go, what's that about? Otherwise, it sat on Grandpa's turntable for 2 years straight, just sitting there collecting dust.
Tell you what, if I could make $46 on a bundle of Herb Alpert albums, I could retire in a week and a half from here.
Yeah, no kidding. I guess just, on your website, you need to build bundle boxes.
There we go. Just don't sell them on Discogs.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, you can still find, occasionally, especially we both belong to a Facebook group called Michigan Record Club. Mm-hmm. And occasionally you'll see posts on there about people who, I had this thrift store find. And it's an amazing album. It's like, okay, how did that get through the filters?
Yeah. You see on Vinyl Community, there'll be these videos. And there's people that are total thrifters. That's all they do. And they go out and they're looking. Yeah, and they pull out something. I remember one found the Morgan, that Psych album, found an original Psych album. I guess that might have been in antique stores, like $1.
Yeah.
And it's like, he's like, wow, hundreds and hundreds of dollars it's worth. It can happen, but it's becoming a lot more rare.
It's a rarity. Now, my biggest ever thrift store find, you're familiar with this one, in a pile of just garbage records, the stuff that sits and sits and sits forever, was a Rationals album, the Ann Arbor group from the 60s, the Rationals. and it was autographed. And I found this in a thrift store in the Upper Peninsula, of all places. And, my son was with me at the time, and he's like, is this something? I'm like, you're darn right, that's something. So we got that, and it wasn't a chain thrift store. It was a local one. I ended up paying them a lot more for it than they were asking, simply because I wanted to do that. I'm helping them out. That was the one that ended up.
Yeah, which I did wind up buying and decided to have a flood, and so now it's all thrown out. But yes, but it was nice that at least we could share that album for a little bit.
And you know what? There are finds like that to be found, but like you said, they're so difficult nowadays.
Yeah, I don't know how these people that's all they do find this stuff, and maybe there's other, again, local thrift stores, different things where they're not going this way. Possibly Salvation Army isn't doing this. I don't know.
No, I think they are too.
Are they?
I've heard that they're doing that also.
All right.
I did not look at the Salvation Army websites, but I'd heard that they're kind of going in that direction too. And I can't remember the last time I've gone into a local thrift store here looking for records. It's been a year or two, simply because it's not worth my time to do the dig.
I did it 2 weeks ago and filmed it, and it was very it's very depressing, quite honestly. Yeah, we've changed, as a world with online. And online has that's why this has happened. People now have made a business online by selling this stuff and going to Goodwill. So now Goodwill just go, we need to cash in. Why are we giving all this good stuff away? And as long as it goes to that good cause, to hiring people, to doing job, fairs to help people, I'm fine. I do struggle. Again, we're not going into 7 digit salaries and that, but it's. Yeah,
it's a tough one, isn't it?
It is.
It's a tough one to rationalize.
Yeah.
So there's obviously people buying them. I mean, if they weren't buying them, who is buying these records? Somebody is.
Yeah.
Because they wouldn't be selling them for that if they weren't selling them.
It's pure profit because we just give it. Here you go. Have this, and maybe that's where probably the biggest issue is just the fact. It was free when we got in. And so other people were finding this and doing something with it. Well, now all this free stuff that they're getting, we're going to make a ton of extra money on. That's kind of the head scratcher.
It is. And again, I'm not going to fault them for stepping into the capitalistic fray that is online sales of record albums, because, earlier we were complaining about Discogs and the profit that they're trying to turn because they do what they do. They've got to make their money. Goodwill, Salvation Army, they've got to make their money, employ their people, and provide their services the same as everybody else. So
if you are bringing it in, obviously you just want to get rid of it. You don't really care, free or whatever. It's valuable. It doesn't really matter. I just want it out of my house.
Yep.
I mean, and there's even some record stores you go, they won't give you anything for it, and you've always been very honest with your pricing. But, there's some that just, no, I don't want it. I won't take it.
Yep.
Away to Goodwill.
So be it. That's where we're going with this online stuff. And by the way, we're going to be revamping our website to sell more online on Radio Wasteland, Steve. So stay tuned.
All right.
I'm going to put out these Herb Alpert bundles.
They're big. They're going big. You just have to keep looking. How long has that been in there? How long has that been in there?
There is a box of Herb Alpert back there that I can guarantee has been there for 6 years.
Oh,
minus the whipped cream. That one goes regardless.
Yeah.
It's everything else that doesn't. So. All right. Well, Steve, I think we're up on time on this one. And that was a potpourri. Do you smell better and feel better?
I do. I just smell absolutely fantastic.
Kind of catching up the chaff. So this has been two guys talking about records, a vinyl community podcast. As always, Steve, it's been a pleasure. I'm Jim, a record store owner.
And Steve, a record collector.
We will talk to you folks again next week.
Yep. Bye.